Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in to Capitol View, a weekly webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com, talking about what's going on in the state capitol and other places, anything to do with the Mississippi legislature and Mississippi politics and everything therein. Bobby Harrison joining us, of course, as always, from Jackson, our Capitol Bureau Chief. I'm Brad Locke. Again, we come to you every Monday about 2 o'clock here at djournal.com. If you miss it live, watch the replay right here. All right, Bobby, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, how you doing?
I cannot complain, sir. Cannot complain.
Oh, that's
It's
good.
been almost a week since we decided who will be our next president. It was a bit of a shocker for a lot of people. A lot of people still trying to deal with it. But we can talk about that a little bit, I guess. It's been almost a week. I think maybe more relevant to us, a couple of things to do with Phil Bryant. First off, he's still not really happy with the way the Electoral College is set up, which has been set up that way for quite a while. Is he?
Yeah, it's been since the founding of the country. It's been set up that way, and it definitely helped his candidate this time. He was a Trump supporter, and Trump last time I checked was even though he won the electoral, he's going to win the electoral vote by a comfortable margin. In the popular vote, he's down about 600,000 votes right now, so he's going to lose that by not a large margin, but by a larger margin. He's going to lose the popular vote than what Lyndon Johnson. No, than what Richard Nixon lost to John Kennedy in 1960, and by a larger margin than what he's going to lose than what Al Gore lost to when Al Gore defeated George Bush in the popular vote in 2000, but he lost to Electoral College too.
Well, yeah, the guy that it was. Bryant was saying this was part of the, quote, rigged system, which most reasonable people think it's not a rigged system. But, it seems like not just Phil Bryant, but a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, honestly, Bob, it seems like a lot of people maybe could use a basic civics lesson into why we have an electoral college as opposed to a just straight up popular vote winner. Just kind of have to start with the fact that, Bobby, we're not a pure democracy.
Well, we're a representative democracy, I think, is the term that political scientists might use, and the Electoral College was developed when the Constitution was written, and it was kind of a compromise. They wanted to make sure that the bigger states did not have a big advantage over the, because as most people probably know, your electoral votes, or every state gets 2 electoral votes for their senators, and then also gets votes for the number of House members they have, U.S. House members they have. So Mississippi has 4 U.S. House members and 2 senators, so they get 6 electoral votes. And those 2 senators kind of gives the small states an advantage, because we, even though we're a lot smaller in California, we get 2 votes for our senators, just like California does.
I mean, what this basically does, Bobby, is it prevents candidates from just focusing on dense population areas like California and New York, certain cities like Chicago, whatever. I mean, you've got a campaign just about everywhere, and that's why we have like swing states like Florida and Ohio and North Carolina.
Yeah, but I mean, and there's Brad. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages of doing it either way. I mean, with
sure,
with the Electoral College, the swing states are the ones that get all the attention, whether it be a tiny state like New Hampshire that's a swing state,
yep,
or a bigger state like Ohio. But states like Mississippi, where we're a solid red state, we still don't get any attention because
true,
because we're expected to be in the Republican column. So either system, there's advantages and disadvantages, and I wouldn't advocate. I'm not smart enough to say what's the best system, whether this system is better than the popular vote system or the popular vote system is better. But I guess it kind of depends on where your candidate finished in the election as far as what you think is the best system this time around. But who knows? 4 years from now, Donald Trump might win the popular vote and lose the electoral vote. Then people will probably be, the people's opinion on the issue will probably be changed. But I guess Phil Bryant can say he was consistent. He was had problems with the Electoral College before the election. He had problems with it after the election when it helped his candidate, and so he's at least been consistent in that sense.
He's talked a little bit about maybe developing a proportional system. What does he mean by that?
Well, I mean, you could do it different ways. Two states already have a type of proportional system in Maine and Nebraska. You know, in the rest of the states, if you win the popular vote in that state, say in California, if you win the popular vote, whether it's by 10 percentage points or 1% percentage point, you get all the electoral votes in California, which I think I think it's like 55 electoral votes. The same in Mississippi and the same in 48 other states. But in Maine and Nebraska, is if you win the popular vote statewide, you get the 2 electoral votes for those Senate electors. But then the rest of the electoral votes are divvied up based on congressional districts. So if the candidate wins the congressional district, gets the electoral vote. So that would be one type of proportional system. Another type would be just, I mean, I think what they do in some parliamentary systems where you get so many votes for the number of votes you get in a congressional district or in a state, and that'd be real confusing. And we might speak for weeks to determine who the winner was doing it that way.
Bobby, and something that about this time last week kind of started making the rounds was the rumor that maybe Phil Bryant would receive an offer to serve in the Trump administration. And now that he's been elected, where do we stand on that? Have we heard anything further?
No, and he had a press conference Wednesday, right the day after the election, and he said that at that time that he wasn't looking for a position, but if the president came a calling, he'd have a hard time saying no. And what's been talked about the most is Secretary of Agriculture. You heard some talk about Secretary of Energy. Either one of those positions would be a plum position. I mean, being governor of a state is also a plum position, but there hadn't been many cabinet level positions from Mississippi. You had right now, former Governor Ray Mavis is Secretary of the Navy, which is a component of I guess under this the defense
right
of Ash Carter, who is Secretary of Defense. So he's kind of a sub-level secretary. I hope I have that right. I hope that's the proper way to say it. It's a very important position, but and then back in under the first Clinton administration, Mike Espy, a congressman from the Delta, Mississippi congressman from the Delta, was Secretary of Agriculture during that administration. So those are the two in recent memory that from Mississippi who had cabinet level positions in the federal government.
Well, there were certainly other elections of note around here last Tuesday. Of course, we had Trent Kelly, who, as expected, had a cakewalk in his reelection bid for the 1st Congressional District. And then we had the state Supreme Court race, District 3, Place 1. There were 2 District 3 races. The one we were concerned with had 4 candidates. Going to have a runoff between John Brady and Bobby Chamberlain on November 29th, Bobby. So I don't know how you can handicap that one because they both got it right at 30% of the vote.
Yeah, and they, you got Brady's on the eastern side of the district, and down in Columbus, and was able to raise a good bit of money. And Bobby Chamberlain's over on the western side of the district in DeSoto County. I mean, and if you're just looking at pure population, DeSoto County is by far the largest county in the district, so that might give him an advantage. He is a incumbent circuit judge, a former legislator. Brady is an attorney in the Columbus area, so we'll have to just see how that turns out. You never know about those Supreme Court races. It's going to be it'll be the only race on the ballot, I guess. So unless there's some local judicial races on the ballot, so it'll just be a matter of which candidate is the best, does the best job at getting his or her supporters to the polls on that day.
Let's switch gears a little bit, Bobby. Let's talk about education funding. It continues to be a hot topic. And, of course, the legislature has hired this company from New Jersey, EdBill, to kind of lead the effort to revamp the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, the vehicle they use for determining funding for public schools in Mississippi. Last we heard, Bobby, no no set hearings for this, because I know they're maybe hoping to undertake this with the next legislative session, but they're also hoping to have some hearings on this matter, and we don't know anything yet about any hearings, do we?
Well, breaking news, Brad. Just as not too long before we came on the air here, is that the proper term? Or we came on the internet at least? The governor, lieutenant governor's office, and House Speaker's office announced that a public hearing, at least one public hearing, will be held Thursday here at the state capitol at 4:00. I think it is Thursday afternoon, and you have. But you need to have your facts together and be ready to speak quickly, because the public hearing is scheduled for an hour, and and each person his comments will have only 3 minutes. So you need to get up there and say your piece and sit down. Now you can send written comments to a new web address that the speaker and lieutenant governor have established, and you can find that address unless you have it there in front of you, you can find it in the Daily Journal.
It's school finance. Yeah, it's school finance at ls.ms.gov. School finance at ls.ms.gov. And you had a story today, actually, Bobby. Nancy Loom with the Parents Campaign, big education advocate. She has some concerns, obviously, about the revamping this formula. Her big concern outlined in the story today was, how do you determine the base student cost, which is, of course, the amount of money provided by the state and local government to educate just your typical child. That doesn't include special needs children and gifted children and whatnot. So what's kind of her big concern in regards to that? Does she feel like you're not going to address that, or what?
Well, that's kind of the crux of the issue in her eyes, in that, there needs to be a objective way to determine what the base student cost is that each school district gets to help educate a child. And right now it's figured by, under the current formula, it is figured by, you take the C level or average school districts, you take the official, and there's a criteria to make sure you only have the officially run districts, and they calculate how much the base student cost is in those districts, not how much. That's how much each district is supposed to get.
Right.
And she just doesn't want it to be left to the whim of the legislators to determine each year what they can afford, and if they want to provide a big tax cut instead of fund education, they won't have that hanging over the head saying, well, you owe education this amount of money. There's other ways to do it. I mean, I've heard people talk about doing it by taking the average of the per pupil expenditures in the surrounding states and make that the base to the cost of Mississippi. But if you did that, Mississippi provides less funding for schools than any state in the southeastern region. So if you did it that way, it would be a boom for Mississippi schools. So they're right now they can't fund MAEP, so I doubt they'll, which is the current funding form of Mississippi Adequate Education Program. So I doubt they would go to that state comparison and to determine the base student cost. But how they can do that is a big factor going forward in this whole debate.
All right, well, good stuff as always, Bobby. That's going to wrap it up here for Capitol View today. Again, coming to you every Monday about 2 o'clock to talk about what's going on in the state legislature or state government and everything related to it. Bobby can be found on Twitter at BobbyHarrison9. Of course, you can read all his coverage in the Daily Journal and at djournal.com. Bobby, as always, appreciate your time, and we'll see everybody back here next week.
Thanks, Brad.